Hi, I'm John Fox of Bookfox, and I'm going to give you 5 storytelling tips that will help you write your novel. Number 1, character should create plot. Have you ever said, what should happen next in my book? That is the wrong question. What you're doing is you're having plot lead the way and characters follow along like they're on a leash behind you. Instead, to figure out what happens next in your book, you should be asking yourself character-based questions. What does my character want next? What choice flows naturally from who they are? And what would be the worst obstacle I could possibly put in their way? In The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, we see that Offred is one of the few remaining fertile women in the United States. And so she's subjected to forced sex, forced impregnation, and she's really restricted. The plot flows out of the character's fertility. Offred's personality is torn between being a rebel and being conforming. That means sometimes the plot shows her being rebellious and taking risks, and other times it shows her being very meek and submissive to try not to upset the boat. The second tip is to escalate your story. I see so many authors content to sort of coast on their initial premise. They have a couple breaking up, so that couple continues to break up. They have a detective story, and that detective continues their investigation. But what I see in the best writers is that they're always trying to escalate the storyline, to make it much, much worse for the characters, or much, much better. In Cormac McCarthy's Road, we start out with this post-apocalyptic wasteland, and we're thinking, this is about as bad as it can get, right? Well, you would think so, but it keeps on getting worse. Much worse. Sickness, thieves, starvation, cannibals, you name it, Cormac McCarthy throws it at these characters. So just remember that no matter where you take your characters, it can always get worse. And just so you don't think I'm an absolute pessimist and love torturing characters, it can also get much, much better. If you have a scene where characters are experiencing love or happiness, look for a way to take that to the next level. Give them some reason to be even extra happy and extra joyful. The third tip is to plant emotional landmines. Let me ask you this question. What makes a great book? I would argue a great book is when a reader feels really strongly about it. So the secret tip is the more you can make a reader feel something, the stronger affection they're going to have for your book. Essentially, the plot of your book is worthless if it doesn't make the reader feel emotion. Anne Patchett is actually really good at this. In her novel, State of Wonder, she has a doctor who, when she was a resident, she performed a C-section, but she cut too deep. And she blinded the baby by cutting its eye and then cut its face open as well. Our heart obviously breaks for this child, and it also breaks for this doctor because she has been carrying around this guilt and shame over what she did. And in her novel, every new chapter adds another emotional landmine like this. We learn right after a man dies that his wife had been writing him letters for years, but none of them got through. We see a really rude and insulting character, and as a reader, it raises our hackles because we like these characters, don't abuse them. And we also see, because of a miraculous drug inside the novel, a woman in her 70s get pregnant. Whatever you do in your book, make sure you are triggering the reader's emotions on a regular basis. That is the very purpose of your plot. The fourth tip is to end your chapters on the past and the future. Look, the addiction level of a book depends largely on the end of your chapters. If you end your chapters on a sagging note, the reader's going to put down that book and who knows, they might not get back to it. But what a really good chapter does is it simultaneously looks at the past, referencing something that happened earlier in that chapter or earlier in the book. And yet it also looks at the future and it teases the reader like, okay, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen in just a little bit, just you wait. James McBride in The Good Lord Bird is actually fantastic with his chapter endings. One of his chapter ends, but he made a mistake in letting the Reverend go that day, and it would cost him down the line. So that chapter ending looks at the past by saying what happened in that chapter. He let the Reverend go. But it also looks at the future, saying, oh, that's going to cost him down the line. And so as readers, we want to keep reading because we want to find out how it's going to cost him. The fifth tip for your storytelling toolbox is always have subplots. Sometimes writers can get so caught up in the main plot of their story, they forget usually you need about 2 subplots. So if your main plot is sort of a big genre idea, like solve the mystery or stop the antagonist, then you would want your subplot to be more relational based. For instance, finding romance, or helping an older family member, or caring for a sick child. In Gillian Flynn's novel Sharp Objects, we see that the main plot is trying to find the serial murderer of these young girls. But the subplot is a romantic one. It's between the journalist, who is the main character, and the officer who is investigating the case. And then there is a second subplot on the journalist's relationship with her manipulative and evil mother. Now, if you are writing a novel whose main plot is a relational one, say a love story, then you would want the subplots to be more page-turning stories, such as a mysterious thief stealing small items, or maybe someone graffitiing offensive messages somewhere around town, or there's a hit and run spree. All right, that's it. I hope these 5 tips were helpful to build your storytelling techniques. And if you'd like more advice on how to write fiction, please check out my online courses for writers at Bookfox Academy. Also, please consider joining the community we have here at Bookfox called Bookfox Plus. And I also offer regular coaching calls if you have any questions about writing or publishing. Thanks for listening and happy writing.